When we ask ourselves the question, am I good enough? What are we really asking? Good enough for what or for whom?
Oh, wow. What a deep question. I have issues with that. And you don't even know that you're asking yourself that question. You just feel inadequate. We have a tendency, I think, especially women, to put ourselves behind other people, like other people's needs come before us. And we almost have to remind ourselves consciously to build that muscle. Oh, yes, I am worthy. So I think the big question is, am I good enough? Is more about, am I worthy? Am I going to let somebody or even myself down? And the answer is always, you're damn right. You are worthy.
Hi friends, it's Mitzi. I have a special opportunity for you, the Rich Thinking Conference. It's a day of mind-blowing potential. You know how they say you have to get into the right rooms with the right people? Well, I have spent the last year and a half learning how true this is. And that is why I wanted to create a room like this for you, to make it easy so you don't have to go searching too hard to find these kinds of places. So Renee V, my partner, and I have curated an event like those that we have loved attending as we have built our businesses. It's an event like the ones that have made a true difference in advancing our minds and our businesses forward. If you have been watching me grow, this is how I have done it. It's a secret trick. I have surrounded myself with people and environments that have empowered me and fueled my growth. And now I want to invite you to be a part of this world. But we have limited seats available. So don't wait to buy your ticket. Once we sell out, the room will not hold anymore. You'll get to be in the all-star energy of globally recognized speakers, Coach Michael Burt, Neil Bakshi, Amber Ibarra, Brian Galke, and L.A. Williams. Plus, I can hug you in person. So go to richthinking.org for more info and to grab your seats. Now, get your blessings on.
Welcome back to the Blessings Podcast, everyone. And today I want my single mommies to unite because I have with me a truly super woman, Mona Andrei. Mona is an award-winning humor blogger and author who has a Seinfeld-like way of seeing the humor in the idiosyncrasies and foibles of everyday life. She has a beautiful way of ameliorating the capital T and small t traumas that we all experience so we can not only find silver linings, but we can spin that silver into cloaks that we can wear as magical armor, or even like a magical belt, like Wonder Woman. And her book, Superwoman, here it is, a funny and reflective look at single motherhood, showcases her own story and the stories of other single mommies out there doing the best they can, me included. She's also a competitive hip hop dancer, which I love about her, and her moves put the likes of J-Lo to shame. So welcome to the Blessings Podcast, Mona.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me. Oh my God, that was such a nice intro. Love your wordsmithing there.
You're welcome. Yes, my former life as a writing professor comes in really handy, writing my intros. So I can't wait to dig into your story, but I wanted to start out with a bit of a big question. When we ask ourselves the question, am I good enough? What are we really asking? Good enough for what or for whom?
Oh, wow. What a deep question. I have issues with that. And you don't even know that you're asking yourself that question. You just feel inadequate. We have a tendency, I think, especially women, to put ourselves behind other people, like other people's needs come before us. And we almost have to remind ourselves consciously to build that muscle. Oh, yes, I am worthy. So I think the big question is, am I good enough? Is more about, am I worthy? Am I going to let somebody or even myself down? And the answer is always, you're damn right. You are worthy. Like
That's
I said.
right. Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah. We always have to remember that we're worthy, even when we don't feel like we're enough. And there's always that's question. It seems to be always out there. Are we enough? Yes, you're enough. And it's just this natural tendency we have. You're absolutely right. But your participation in life is predicated upon your inherent value. And
Yeah.
so I think it's important for us to remember that.
But I
Thank you
think
for that.
that where it comes from is somewhere at some point in our lives, somebody might have made us feel like we're not enough. And
Mm,
it wasn't a reflection on us. It was a reflection on them, because it always comes from somewhere else, right? Somebody projected something on us. And it could be when we're 2 years old. It could be when we're 12 years old. It could be when we're 22 years old. But I think that's where it stems from.
yeah, I think you're right. Because we're not born feeling unworthy.
No.
No. So speaking of being born, where were you born?
So I was born in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. I'm Canadian, but my parents moved to Quebec, Montreal when I think I was about two and a half. So I still have family in Saskatchewan, but I guess my roots are more here now in Quebec.
Do you speak French?
I do. My mother's French. So I'm half French. My mother's French, my father's English with Romanian ancestry. But yes, I'm bilingual.
That's beautiful. I have been to Montreal and it is a beautiful place. Very wintry there in the wintertime, but
Yeah, it's
it is
cold.
beautiful.
Yeah.
So interesting. So tell me a little bit about your family of origin. You mentioned your mom and your dad. Do you have any siblings?
I had a brother. He passed away from brain tumors several years ago. We were close. We were very close. That's just it's life. It's life. Apart from that, it's just me, my kids, my parents. Thank goodness they're in good health. And yeah,
Wow, I'm sorry to hear about that. I didn't know about your brother passing. That's sad. What do you think you learned from that experience of losing your brother?
I think that live in the moment, appreciate everything that you have, because nothing is forever. What do we have? We have today. I actually have a tattoo right here, right now, that reminds me of that. Whether I'm going through something hard or something joyful, get back into the moment right here, right now.
Yeah. So when you were growing up, did you have a sense of that joy? How would you describe your childhood?
I was always a very pensive child, watched, observed, took things in, tried to understand things. I think I had a good childhood. I Everybody has their lessons or their challenges, but I think I navigated them pretty well. Yeah, I think I had a good childhood. I'm going to say three parents. I have my parents divorced when I was 11. So have my mother, and then I have my father who remarried to a wonderful lady. So I have three wonderful people with all different, I'm going to say, perspectives on life that I can go to if I had questions or whatever. So I feel blessed for that.
Beautiful. And what would you say is the biggest thing you had to navigate when you were little?
Self-esteem. So it's
Hmm,
interesting that you started this off with that
that
self-esteem.
is interesting. When
Yeah.
did you notice that self-esteem, even if you couldn't put a name on it or a label
Yeah.
on it, when did you notice that was an issue for you?
I'm not going to say that I noticed it then, but in hindsight, I remember being in kindergarten and looking around and feeling like the outsider. I felt like everybody else knew each other, but that is impossible because it was our first year of school for everybody. But for some reason, I've always felt like an outsider. So to your point, I can't put a label. I could not put a label to it. But in hindsight, that's the first thing that comes to my mind, the first memory in that regard.
Did that continue throughout your life?
Yeah, I always felt like an outsider. I always felt like, how come I can't hang out with the mean girl? No, I shouldn't say mean girls, but the popular girls. And it's funny because that's the perception I had. But then meeting up with friends that I went to school with years later, decades later, apparently I was one of the popular girls. I just didn't know it.
That's interesting. And I
Yeah.
think it's interesting how you said first said mean girls
I
and then
know,
popular
I know,
girls. Are
I
the
know.
mean girls
Actually,
always the popular girls or
no, I think it's
vice
because
versa?
of it's a conversation that I had with someone yesterday about Mean Girls, there's a situation going on in a circle. So a
Mm.
circle with their daughter and whatever. So I think that's where that stems from. It wasn't really Mean Girls looking back. Nobody was,
Mhm.
there were Mean Girls, but I had nothing to do with. wanting to get into that circle.
So you'd say your friends would have described you as popular, but you didn't describe yourself as popular.
No, not at all.
What was one of the most interesting or craziest things you did as a teenager?
Okay,
First thing
so
that pops into your mind.
actually, the first thing that popped into my mind was I was waiting for a bus, and the bus was in front of a house with a for sale sign on it, and across the street was a church, and I took the for sale sign from that lawn and I put it in the lawn of the church. So yeah.
That was
Why?
spontaneous.
Yeah. I don't know. I just thought it would be so funny.
That is funny. Did anything ever come of it? Did you go
No,
back and check?
I
You
got on the
just did
bus.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is so funny. Oh my gosh. Did you have any role models around that time when you were a teenager?
Role models. I guess my parents. My parents. Yeah. My parents.
It sounds like you navigated your parents' divorce very well.
I think I did. Yeah, I think I did. It was just, and especially I find that the way that my father introduced his now wife was really well done. So at first, she would come over for the evening and we would drive her home. And then it was like, Debbie's gonna sleep. Her name is Debbie. Debbie's gonna sleep over, and I had a huge bed, so she'll sleep with you in your room. And then it was like, do you mind if Debbie sleeps with me tonight? And it was like, it just happened so natural. So I have to commend my father on the way that he handled that.
That's really beautiful from a child's perspective that you were able to see that transition ease in a way
Yeah.
that made you feel comfortable.
Yep. I didn't even notice it at the time. They got divorced. I was 11, so I was about 12 at the time. And honestly, I didn't notice it. It's just looking back and realizing that it was when he asked me, I was like, yeah, of course.
Yeah. And what else did they do well that you think looking back?
My mother did something really good. Two things that come to my mind. I remember my math teacher calling my mother to complain about I wasn't studying, I wasn't paying attention in class, I was going to fail. And I'll never forget and this teacher was a scary teacher. My mother's response was, Mona is a writer. And it was like, it totally stopped me in my tracks. And the other thing I remember her doing, so we're washing the dishes. I was drawing, she was washing. And she opened the cupboard after, and she took out one glass that she had dried and one that I had dried. And she said, Mona, which glass would you rather drink from? So instead of chastising me for doing a crappy job and just wanting to get it done, and it just stayed with me. And it was like, I guess, yeah, that one, you're right. So I
I
thought that was,
love that.
yeah, yeah. And it's
That's
such a
very
simple thing,
clever.
right? It's
Yeah.
simple and it's almost like inconsequential, but really it makes you realize almost like the natural consequences for yourself. So yeah, that was really well done.
Yeah. It's something parents instinctively, we just want to say, what are you doing wrong?
Right.
And here's how you can do it better. Like we want to just give instructions
Yeah,
instead of using things as a teaching opportunity, like your mom.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I like your mom. So I know that you talk a lot about romantic relationships in your book. And I'm wondering, like, at what period of time did you have your first love?
My first love. My first love. Oh geez. Let me go back. Let me step into my time machine. My first real love. Wow. Okay, so I'm gonna say, yeah, I remember my first kiss. I was in grade 1. That wouldn't be my first love.
Tell us about the first kiss now that you brought it up. What happened?
So we were for some reason, and I wrote about this recently. We were for some reason the only two in the class getting ready for our Canadian winter, putting on our snowsuits, and next thing I know, he's leaning in to kiss me. And then I can't wait to finish putting on my snow pants so that I can go out and tell my friends that he kissed me.
In the closet?
Yeah, we had this little room in the back of the class where we would hang up all our winter gear and stuff. But yeah, So I can't say that's my first love. That I'm going to call that my first crush because I had a crush on him and it was like, oh my goodness, he kissed me.
Did you ever look him up?
And
What's he
then
doing
nothing ever
now?
happened.
Nothing
Sorry.
ever happened. You weren't
No,
you didn't have a relationship
no.
first grade?
What is a relationship? How old are you at that time? 7? I don't
Yeah.
even remember if, because we used to pass around Valentine cards at
Mhm.
that. So it would be like, I don't even remember if there's no memory of that. So no, I think it was just that. And then we both moved on. You know what I mean? Grade 1, 7 years
Grade
old. Like,
1. I
what's gonna
love that. Where is he now?
We're friends on Facebook. I can't mention him. I
Okay.
forget, I think I called him Sebastian in the because I'd written about him or about that situation, and I called him Sebastian in the blog post. I don't want to mention his name because it would be just awkward. And I don't know any Sebastian. So if anybody wants to look me up on Facebook, there's no Sebastian there.
That's funny. All right, so going back to the first love, let's change the question a little bit. When did you first notice what your idea of a relationship between romantic partners look like?
I'm gonna say that not that long ago. So I'm with my personal boyfriend, my someone now. We met again because we actually knew each other in high school about 6 years. It'll be 6 years ago. And I'm going to say that he's the first one to really show me what a loving, caring relationship is. That doesn't feel odd or just, I have to commend him on that. I have to give him like, take off my hat, take off my ponytail, whatever. Prior to that, I didn't really know what it was. Like I met the father of my daughters when I was 19 years old, and I gauged what a relationship was with him, but it wasn't good. Like he wasn't a participating parent or partner. He wasn't a
Mhm.
good partner. So that was because I was at an impressionable age. To me, that was a relationship.
And you
Wrong.
yeah, you talk a lot about picking the quote wrong guys, but I think of it more as that these were lessons for a person when you're making a decision and it turns out to be not great for you. It's because you're meant to learn something from that. But
Yeah.
you go into your whole relationship in the book with the father of your girls, and
Midlife thinking.
it's very interesting. What was going on for you during the time when you were like attracted to him or whatever?
So I don't know. I think he was a few years older than me and so I was 19 when we met and he was 22 and that appealed to me. Everything happened really quickly. And I remember so we had our first daughter together and then our relationship started to go down. I guess I outgrew him. Like I was like, okay, I'm a mom now, like we have a family and he was still into the party scene. And then I thought, okay, and I remember consciously thinking this, okay, if we have a second child, it's a wrong way of thinking. We have a second child, we'll be close again. We'll get close again.
Mm.
That didn't happen. That didn't happen at all. And then I started to realize, you know what? I don't love him. Like, I don't respect him. I don't love him. And then I would have this argument in my head. You have to love him. You have children with him. So I would go back and forth. And then one day I just realized I don't have to love him. I don't have to stay with him. I'm like, he's just bringing us down. This isn't good. And that was when I came to terms with, nope, I'm going to do this on my own.
Yeah. Now you met him when you were 19, and did you ever marry?
No,
And how
no.
long were you together?
We were together for 5 years. I
And you
was
had
20.
2 children in that time, and it took you that time to gather the courage to say, "This isn't gonna work."
Yeah, exactly.
How can
Exactly.
people do that if they're in the situation like that? How can they get the courage to say, because it does take a lot of courage to admit, "Okay, this isn't working." Like, I can go along with it, I can keep going, I can make it be my life, but it's not gonna be a happy life.
Exactly. Actually, I think you need a last straw. And to your point, it really is hard to get out of a relationship. He wasn't abusive in any way, but even if you're in an abusive relationship, and you know this isn't right, it's hard to get out of. It really is. For me, the last straw was he was getting ready to go out, and then he asked me for $20, and I'll never forget, I needed baby formula. I was the only one working at the time. And I said, I need this. I have to get baby formula. And he said, oh, I'll borrow it off someone else. And then while he was in the shower getting ready to go out, his friend, whom I'm still friends with today, called to speak with him whenever. And I said, he's in the shower. And then I said, so I heard it cost $20 to get in. And he said, no, it doesn't cost anything because my father's the one that organized it and whatever. So he's playing. So that's when I realized, oh, he was lying to me. So when he left to go out, I thought, okay, this is it again with the lies. I'm done. I'm done. And it was raining and I threw everything he owned out on the front lawn. Everything he owned. You like watching TV? It's out there. I don't care. That was it. I was finished.
That's crazy. That's a scenario we see like in the movies and there's so many of us probably want to do that, throw all their shit in the lawn.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I was so mad. I was so mad. And then after I did that, I remember lying in bed and just talking to the ceiling and thinking, oh crap, now what? Like now I'm alone. Even though in hindsight, I realized that I was alone prior, right? Because I was the sole breadwinner and blah, 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 and everything. But now you're physically alone. And what happens is you flourish. Okay, I've got this. The first fear is, oh crap. And then the second is, I've got this. I'm going to make this work. I have no choice.
Yeah. And you did flourish.
Yes, I felt it. I really did feel it. You become stronger.
Yeah. Because you don't realize that the relationship is dragging you down.
Until you're out of it, And then you can look behind and go, wow, I was coming home. I was working all day, picking up the kids from the daycare, making supper, and he was just sitting around watching TV. That was his thing. So yeah, you realize it after.
Yeah. I'm glad you got out of that. And I think the metaphor of actually taking the items and physically lifting them and releasing them out the window, it's like physically lifting the weight off of yourself.
Yep. Yep. And committing to a decision
Mm-hmm.
because it's so
Yeah. You
easy to
can't take that back.
exactly. And people, you hear stories of they break up and then they get back together and then they break up again, they come back together. That was it for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And then after you felt that weight lifted off and that sense of flourishing, was it easier for you then to take the emotion out of the experience and be able to view it as a learning opportunity?
For maybe not for a few years.
Mm,
I'm going to say I'm not sure if it was resentment or anger, but he didn't help. He didn't help financially. Not long after he broke my girls' hearts, he moved to the other end of the country, and totally broke their hearts. That I had anger over that too. Like you weren't a good partner, you weren't a good father when we were together. The least you could do every second weekend is actually be there for them. But no, he chose to leave.
that's a
His
shame.
loss. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely his loss, but it showed you something about his character that probably would have come through eventually.
Yeah, exactly. Red signs are everywhere. I chose to ignore them.
That's right. We all do that. You can't beat yourself up over it. It's just
Yeah,
something that happens. And then you can see them like those little red flags, they become more bright after you have an experience like
yeah,
that.
absolutely. And the little voice in your head, it becomes something that you actually say, what? I'm sorry, what did you say? Oh, okay, yeah. I got to listen to you.
Yeah. And so did you have to make a lot of sacrifices at that time when you're a single mom with your little
Oh, for
ones?
sure. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I had no help financially. And even today, in today's world, it's hard to buy a house. It's hard to do everything. I remember my kids asking me for a snack, and my response would be, no, I don't want you to spoil your supper. But really, I had no snack. You know what I mean? And also my
Mm-hmm.
social life. What social life? I Who wants to hang out with a 24-year-old single mother of two children? Really. And I didn't have that much energy, work all day, blah, 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 do all the things. So in a way, I grew up with my kids too. Like I kind of
Mm,
treasure, I miss them being little and mine, miss those years, even though they were hard. So my advice to any single mom is enjoy your kids while you have them, because they do grow up and they grow
mhm.
up quicker than you realize.
That's right. You said something in your book about single motherhood has a way of pulling us out of the moment so that it prohibits us from appreciating the children as they experience their stages of life. How do you stay in the moment with them and appreciate them, even though it's so hard?
Breathe. I know that, literally breathe, like just stop, take a moment. Cause there's so many thoughts swirling. Like you come home and you make dinner and then you've got homework and you've got laundry to do because tomorrow nobody has matching socks, although that's usually not, doesn't, my kids used to, actually, they started that trend in my house. All of them don't wear the same socks to this day. And all of a sudden, oh, mommy, I need to bring in muffins to school tomorrow because it's my turn. And you're like, oh my God. So just stop and breathe. And it's okay to feel flustered. And you're not, there's one thing too that I write about is guilt is a huge lie. It's a big fat lie. And I think all parents, single or not, feel it. All our kids really want is for us to be there for them. That's all they want. They don't care about the big expensive Christmas toys, or they just want us to do something with them. Talk, chat, play a game, show the bake with them.
Mhm. Yeah, it's the simple things. I don't know how many times I would get for my kids a giant box. I would find a box discarded somewhere, like from a refrigerator, even if it was a real
Yes,
treat. And then you just spend time doing something that costs nothing, creating a house
yeah,
out of a box. That's your whole life, is doing that, figuring out ways to create magical experiences that are free.
yes, yep. Releasing
Yeah.
that inner child within ourselves
Yeah.
to hang out with them. That's so therapeutic. And
Yeah.
it's so bonding too.
It
It
really
really,
is. You say that guilt is not just a lie, but it's also a sixth sense. What did you mean by that?
so we have all our senses, but it comes in as almost, oh, something that we should be paying attention to, but no, we should not be paying attention to that. It's not something that even deserves our attention.
We
We should
make it a part of ourselves so much that it feels like another sense, and we should not allow that to take place, is what you're saying.
no,
Yeah.
exactly be focusing on something else.
Yeah. Yeah. Because guilt isn't useful as a tool. Like, it's something that's trying to tell us something about ourselves, not about the situation.
And it's a lie. It's a lie. Like you might feel guilty because, oh, I yelled, or when I got frustrated and whatever, or I wish I could get my kids this or take them to a movie or whatever. But again, all they want is us. That's
Right.
all they want. And
Right.
spending time with our kids, I find especially today, we're so distracted with our phones and our devices and whatever. If we can just zone in on our children and listen to them, we're both gonna gain something from that. As opposed, my son, I remember, and I'm guilty of it. My son, one time, he was telling me something that happened to him, and I was doing the dishes, and he said, "Mummy, stop saying because he knew when I went I was not paying attention, and it just brought me into the moment, and I realized, oh, okay, okay, stop, sit down, and listen to him. The laundry can wait.
Yeah. The laundry can wait. That should be the mantra of any mom.
Yes,
The
exactly.
laundry can wait. You just mentioned a son. They had two little girls with this first relationship. How
Yeah.
did this move into another relationship with
So
someone else?
10 years later, I met the father of, so I have 4 children, but my two
Okay.
girls with Mr. What Was I Thinking? And then I had a son and another daughter with another man who, we're not together anymore. We haven't been together in a long time, 15 years, I guess now. Yeah, but that, a little bit less of a Mr. What Was I Thinking? He was always involved with the kids. Um, yeah, and one thing I want to say is that there was never any half brother, half sister in my house. We
Mm,
So even though there's 10 years difference, they are full sister and brother.
yeah, that's beautiful. I love families who are able to blend so seamlessly that way. It makes such a difference for the kids.
It does, absolutely, absolutely. Otherwise, it's how come you have a daddy and I don't? And he was good. He was
Yeah.
very good to my girls as well.
Aw, that's great. Do they still have a relationship?
I think they do. I think I haven't spoken to him in a few years. Up until I think this is a few years. No, not even a few years. I think this year was the first Christmas. We always spend Christmas at my mother's. And this was the first Christmas that he didn't come with us and hang out with
Mm.
us.
Oh,
So
there's a little bit of a sadness in that, right?
no, not really. He had
Okay.
other commitments. He had other commitments, and it was like, go and don't even worry about it. You're in a new relationship now, and of course, there's a different dynamic there. And the kids are all grown; they're all adults.
Yeah.
So, no, it was fine. He got to spend Christmas with them on another day, and that was it.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. I don't know. I still feel a little bit of sadness about not having everyone together. Even though I don't want to be with my kid's father, I still really enjoy the times when we are all together. And I do feel like a little sadness when
Yeah,
we're,
yeah.
you know.
Absolutely. I get that. To your point, I say it often. I miss when my kids were young and still mine. Now one lives in New York, one lives in the city, one lives two live actually quite close to me. But for us all to be together,
Mhm.
very rare.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
Every
I know. And it does happen. Like even when like my kids now are all living in very different places from one another, very far away. And I go to them individually, but for everyone to get together this year for the first time, it didn't happen at the holidays. One of my children didn't come back. And it was hard. And I think when you have children and you're so devoted to them, your whole persona is wrapped up in being a mom, then when they go on their own and you're in that quote empty nest phase, you're forced to go back and revisit your own identity again. Your self-awareness, it's a shift into self-awareness, like in a new way.
a new
Uh,
phase.
yeah, it's a new phase. I feel sometimes it feels a little bit like I'm a ping pong ball, like going back and forth between wanting to go back to my old momming habits and behaviors and realizing, oh, you don't have to do that anymore. Like they're
Right.
okay. How do you
Really
cope with
are.
that?
They really are okay. I think it's just I don't know. I think one, we should always have things that so being a parent is one of the most important jobs and one of the most important roles that we'll play ever in someone else's life. But the one thing, even when your kids are very young, we're still individuals with dreams, goals, and aspirations of our own. So I think it's important that we feed ourselves from day zero, like from the very beginning, in order to be able to feed others. They say it on the airplanes, put the mask on you and then tend to your children, right? It's the same thing and what happens is you feel as an individual, you feel more fulfilled and you're a better parent from it.
Yeah, definitely. One thing you talk about in your book, which I found really interesting, and I've been thinking a lot about this lately, is, and it ties into when your kids are older and and having their own experiences, and how you can branch out and have different experiences as you are exploring your life without them. But there's this paradox we have about talking to strangers. And when your kids are little, you're telling them don't talk to strangers and you're afraid of other people or talking to them in certain situations. But then in adulthood, we're taught, okay, go ahead and go out there and talk to lots of people. It's called networking now.
Yeah.
So I want to touch a little bit on that. Like, how do you feel about that shift we have from like this fear of strangers to this draw of strangers?
Actually, that makes me think of, so I used to tell my kids, don't talk to strangers, don't talk to strangers. And it was only when my oldest daughter was in her early 20s that she said to me one time, Mommy, you remember that you used to tell us not to talk to strangers? And yeah, of course. She goes, I didn't know what a stranger was. So I had never taken the time to explain what is a stranger. Interesting, eh? Like I just took it for granted, as we do. We take it for granted that our kids will understand what we mean.
Mhm. Yeah.
So it is a big shift. I think that, especially in today's world, it's important that we teach our kids to be always let mommy know where you are. Like, do not ever think it's a fun game to go hide you're in a department store and you're going to go hide behind this rack of clothes. It is never, ever a fun game. But at the same time, always be pleasant to other people. If somebody says hello to you, it's okay to say hello to them, but you stay close to me. Like I'm talking when kids are very young.
Mm-hmm.
So, and bringing them to different social events at a young age, maybe even I'm going to call it, say, networking with other parents where their children are there is probably a good experience for kids to help them not be shy, to help them feel comfortable in environments where they don't know everybody there. That's probably a good thing too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So instead of teaching fear, to teach how to be more discerning about how to interact with people you don't know and be able to vet them to know that they're safe or not safe in some way.
Right.
It's
Right.
more complicated.
Yeah, it is complicated. And also, so I remember being at somebody had invited me and my kids to I think it was around Christmas time. So it was just like a little social gathering. And and it was just my girls and I at the time. And we would have this thing where they were playing with the kids and I'm talking with the adults, but every once in a while we would look at each other and just nod. Yeah, I'm good. So it was almost like we were touching base in our
Mhm.
own little secret world. And I would
Mhm.
know, okay, they're good, I'm good, I'm good, they're good, I'm good. Everybody's happy. Okay, we can
Yeah.
continue playing or talking.
Okay, that's really a great tool to use, just even to teach your kids intentionally. If just let's just make eye contact every now and then, and you can give me the signal.
Yep, yep. Especially when they get to that age where it's like, Mommy, don't kiss me in public. It's embarrassing, whatever. Okay, so fine, I won't. But look at me every once in a while.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think part of that is teaching our children how to get in tune with their own intuition?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And also it gives them confidence. Okay, fine, I'm giving you some space, but you also know that I'm right here if you need me. Because they do need that. Kids need boundaries make them feel safe.
They do. Yeah. So they have that little balance between the external and the internal, and that we could teach them how to gradually learn how to maintain a harmony there and also move towards really trusting your inner voice when mom's not going to be around.
Exactly. It's teaching them independence in baby steps.
Yeah. Yeah. So parenting is so much more than so much more than just the laundry and the dishes and
Oh
the
my God.
taking care of.
You're absolutely, you're their teacher of life,
You're their
really.
teacher of life. Absolutely. Yeah. You said in the book that our experiences are able to make tattoos on our souls. What did you mean by that?
So whether it's something that happens I guess whatever happens in our lives, positive, negative, it's going to impact us. And it depends on how we look at it and how we respond to it. So if something bad happens or if something good happens, we can take that experience and put whatever spin we want on it. But if it's a positive spin, even if it's a negative experience,
Mhm.
that just changes our attitude towards other things. You run into people who are always, it seems like they're not self-aware. It seems like all they do is blame and just they're not positive. And I think that we really can take any experience that we have and turn it into something good for the future and for our self-development, our characters.
I believe that everything has a positive impact that you can find if you want to.
Exactly. That
Yeah.
if you want to,
If you want
and
to.
if you're aware of it, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
It takes a certain amount of self-awareness. Can you tell us about a soul tattoo that you carry with you?
Yep. Actually, I write about this too. It's the story where it was a weekend and my girls were fighting and just frustrated and it was raining out. And I knew I had to take them out. Like I knew I had to do something with them and we didn't have a lot of money. So we were on the bus and I had no idea where I was going to take them, but I told them it was a surprise. And so we get off the bus and then we start walking in Montreal. And I saw we have this something here called St. Joseph's Oratory, which is this big, huge building. So I started talking to them about a castle, and we had to just whatever was coming out of my mind. I didn't even have a story to tell them, like a fairy tale or whatever. So I'm talking about this castle, and every once in a while the castle is attacked and blah, blah, blah. And then they see the castle and they're like, Mommy, that's the castle. You're talking about this castle. So we go in and we're looking at I'm thinking there's going to be stuff for us to do and look at, and it'll be interesting, but we couldn't talk. Like everybody was shushing us. So we went outside and I realized, oh my God, this was a terrible idea. They're not having, what a crappy, disappointing surprise. So we go outside. And I don't know where I don't know. I just pretended to take a sword out of a sheath and I went, girls, we have a job to do. We have to protect the castle from these dragons. So all of a sudden we're like slaying dragons and whatever, jumping from puddle to puddle. And we probably looked ridiculous. But to this day, that stayed on my mind. Like we still talk about it. That was such a memory that stayed with us, where you talk about dragons today, and I think about that. You talk about, oh my God, what am I going to do with my kids? I have no money. And really just take out your imagination. That's a huge tattoo on my brain for me.
That's beautiful. And I think it's one of the characteristics of your writing. Like you use a lot of similes and comparisons in your sort of comedy writing, and you make things stick to your memory. And you might have even used this example. I have it written down, like socks to a towel out of the dryer. Oh yeah, you did. You did just say that. That's a great way of describing how something sticks with you, like socks to a towel. So you have a great way of invoking this visual metaphor so people can really relate, yeah, and they can take the concepts that you're putting out there to heart and they'll remember them.
I think for me, writing is all about sharing and also connecting with other people. And everybody knows that. Everybody has had to, you're folding your towels and, oh, where'd this sock come from? So yeah, it just weaves personal experiences from this person to this person.
Yeah, it weaves its way in. I love that. It's beautiful how you can take your experiences and make them relatable and bring them from your mind into writing. That's a real talent. Not everyone can do that. So it's beautiful.
Thank you.
All right. So another thing you talk about in your book is the idea of the phrase "face it till you make it."
Yes.
You say "face it till you make it" and not "fake it till you make it." Can you describe what you are trying to convey with
Sure.
that?
So I had always wanted to be a writer. That was my thing. And you can't fake. If you're going to say they talk about imposter syndrome today, that's like a term now. If you're faking it, you're always going to feel like just you're not who you say you are. But if you face it and you just, okay, this is a challenge, but I'm gonna show up, I'm gonna do it, okay, this crumple up this version and throw it out and start over again. If you keep facing it, you will get there.
Yes, and I love that. You said something like you could be miserable about it, but you're not faking it. You have to feel what it feels like. Faking it isn't going to get you through, but facing it will.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
I love that. I'm going to remember that for sure. Do you think that parents should have mandatory training?
It's not a bad idea. It's really not a bad idea. I forget, there was a TV show, and I don't remember what TV show it was, where these young elementary school students, they had to have a partner and they had an egg. I think it was an egg where they
Mhm.
had to take care of it together. Do you
Yeah,
remember
I've seen
that?
that. Yep, I've seen that.
Okay, so I thought, wow, that's a really good idea, because we get so caught up in our own lives, in our own heads, that we don't realize the impact that we're having on these little minds, right? Their feelings and everything else. And we said it earlier, it's so important to just stop and breathe and just be present. And I think that's a life skill that they don't teach us that. They don't
Yeah.
teach us that anywhere, unless if you decide, oh, I'm going to take a meditation class. But by now when you're 20s or 30s or 40s, when really you should have done it then. So
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. It's not a bad idea. And it doesn't have to be like parenting class. It could just be okay, you've got this little human, and it's really about relationships. Would you yell at your friend or your boss the way that you just yelled at your child because they have homework to do? And that's such a common thing.
It is. I was thinking about the example you gave with your mom and the glasses. If someone could just teach that thing your mom did, and think about how many little children have parents that would have screamed at them for not having washed the glass or even broken the glass in front of them or done something really violent. Like this would be common for a lot of families.
Yep, absolutely.
I agree. I do think there should be some kind of training. For God's sake, you have to go through a class to drive a car. You have to get a license to catch a fish.
Absolutely.
There should be some kind of minimal training, in my opinion, but
And it wouldn't just be about, or it could be about not so much, or not only about how to parent, but just be
be.
self-aware.
Yeah, exactly. That's where it
And
comes from. It's never about the kids. It's always about the parents, something within them. These
you know what? When
issues.
people take courses, I don't know if they call it a course, but dog training. So dog trainers aren't really teaching the dog. They're teaching
Yeah.
you how to teach the dog.
Yes, they are. Beautiful example. Exactly right. One thing I notice about people when they get a divorce or they leave a relationship, especially when they get a little bit older, is they go through this ballroom dancing phase. You mentioned this in your book, the ballroom dancing. Do you notice this?
It's like unicorn seahorses. They do this dance, right? Which is pretty. It's very beautiful.
I
And
just think it's funny because I actually considered taking ballroom dancing classes myself when I was getting divorced. It's like one of those things. It's crazy.
you want to be active. You want to take your mind out of that.
But why ballroom dancing? I don't know.
You're doing something with other people. Also, when I think of ballroom dancing, I think of you know what I mean? It's smooth. It's not like I'm gonna go and speed date or whatever. It's just fluid and smooth.
Yeah, I always think of the salsa dances, the ones that are more like da da da
Yeah. Yeah.
da.
There's a lot of passion there too,
There
right?
is. Maybe that's what we're looking for. Oh, so interesting. Oh my gosh. All right. So you talk a little bit about this interesting phenomenon that I noticed with my kids in your book. When your kids are at home with you, they're more bratty. They can really vent. They could easily get upset about things, have tantrums and that kind of thing at home. But then when they're out, and I noticed this with my kids, people would compliment me about how wonderful their behavior was. They would be saying please and thank you. They would be doing all the things I wanted them to do that they didn't necessarily do with me, but they were doing them out there in the world. And so I always took this as a compliment because they felt comfortable and safe at home to
Right.
explore those other behaviors. And they did learn somehow, miraculously, the things that I was trying to teach them. Is this something you noticed with your kids? And what's this all
Oh,
about?
for sure. For sure. I think it's human nature for children to push the boundaries to
Mm,
see how far they can go. Actually, that's a really good point that you're bringing up. It reminds us that all the teachings that we're doing, and they think they're not even listening to us, it's getting in there. It's sinking in. They are absolutely, you just proved it by saying that when we're out, they're polite. When we're home, they may not say please and thank you or whatever. It's getting in there. It is getting in there.
yeah. We have to trust that our abilities and our innate sense of guidance, our little like internal guidance system is working and it's helping them. We are navigating them. They're getting there. We just
Yep.
don't always see it right away.
Yep. So they need us to set boundaries, absolutely. And they need us to remind them.
Yeah. Yeah. And to keep doing it, even though you feel like you're not really penetrating it, you really
Right.
actually are. Just trusting that, keep going, keep yourself in a consistent role and showing them the things that you want them to emulate later
It is
on.
getting through. Absolutely, it's getting through.
It is getting through. Yes. I
And
love
the
that.
negative is getting through too. If you're in a negative environment or a bad mood and you come home and you take it out on, you're just frustrated. That's unfortunately, that's getting through too. So you have to be
Hmm.
aware of that.
Hmm. Yeah. And it's interesting the point you brought up earlier about your first relationship where you said there wasn't any abuse going on, but it was not a healthy relationship. And so children will pick up on that. And if you're in a situation where it's not a healthy relationship, but there isn't any big giant thing, there's no abuse, there's nobody on drugs, there's nothing like, quote, big going on. But when you're in an unhealthy relationship and there are arguments or tension or constant stress, that's coming through and it's just as valid. So people should
Absolutely.
not feel guilty about ending a relationship with kids involved when
Yep.
it's not a healthy place.
If you're not happy, your kids are not going to be happy. If you're in a relationship that is dysfunctional, you're teaching your kids that's a normal relationship when it's absolutely not.
Yeah. So maybe the biggest takeaway for parents is to just always be striving to model good things, to model the things you want them to have in their lives when they move forward into relationships.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, what would you say are the biggest lessons that you've learned in your life?
The biggest lessons that I've learned are one, things happen in patterns. So if you're unhappy in a relationship and you leave that relationship and you go to the same type of relationship, that's a pattern. And
Mhm.
you're not going to get over that lesson until you really look at it and go, oh, this is what I'm supposed to get from this. Okay, yes, no, I don't want that. If you're not happy, listen to your feelings. If you're happy, listen to that too. So patterns happen until we get it. And then we can move on to the next level of there's always a lesson. There's always going to be lessons. We're always learning. We have to, otherwise, what's the point?
And then it's not only just getting the lesson, it's then making a change, creating
Yeah.
something new from the knowledge
Yep.
that you've gained. Yeah. What about your blessings? What are the biggest blessings in your life?
Definitely my children, definitely, I'm going to say my attitude. I think that my positive attitude was what got me through a lot of crap. And I love that. I feel fortunate that I love writing because that got me through a lot of stuff too. It gave me something to lean on, and my personal boyfriend.
Aw. So, where can people read your wonderful writing and find you for your other? I know you do ghostwriting as well, things that people might be able to hire
So
you for.
ghostwriting, I can't really tell you about because it's
Right.
writing for other people. But there's my blog, moxiedude.com. It's moxie-dude.com. I call it life updates gone wrong or right. I'm undecided. Like to share personal things, but also try to be insightful. Like I always try to, it's not just about me. I try to provide value. I guess that's one of the things. And sometimes it's just silly, but overall, that's what I try to do.
Yeah. And you've won some awards with your blog.
Yep. I just got something yesterday too. I won Comedy Blog of the Year from Corporate Vision magazine.
Oh,
Which-
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, they're piling up now.
Yeah, there's a few. I've been listed as a top 100 humor blog. And yeah, honestly, I don't know how I got on their radar, but it's a nice feeling. I always need a paper bag when I get the emails or the phone calls. Surprises me.
You're worthy.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Yeah. Like, hello.
Yes, you are. You're an amazing writer. And I've loved this conversation. Thank you so much for digging deep into single motherhood and parenthood and all the things.
Thank
It's
you.
been
Thank you for
really
having.
great. You're
Yeah, I love
welcome.
your podcast. Actually, it's really insightful. You're always providing, speaking of value, you're always providing value, and it's awesome.
Thank you, Mona.